Hi, this is Lundy and this is video 7, and the title of it is Coming Home and Searching for Answers. I want to talk about what it was like getting ready to come home. As you heard in the previous videos, Samantha and Miranda gave you a pretty good account of what all took place. A lot of what happened while I was in the emergency room was sleep time, of course medicated, and even after 5 or 6 hours in the ER going to the room, I can remember some of the trip, from waking up, going down the halls, and as I've said before, this was the first time in my 66 years of at that time of ever being in the hospital, so it was a brand new occasion situation for me. While I was in the ER, and when I would wake up, and I would wake up in the room, I speak a lot about processing, and I've got to say that I had so much to process. Everything that day was brand new to me. Everything that was happening, I'd never had it happen in my life before. But I remember before being discharged, and I was in the ER, when my wife came in, I made a comment to her that I didn't have a thought about it. It wasn't something that I said, well, I just can't wait to tell her this. But when she came in, she looked at me, the first thing I said was, my life will never be the same. Now, I didn't have really any indication of what I was talking about. I just knew that my life was never going to be the same, and I felt it was important to tell her that. So that's what I passed on to her. So, as you know already, we've taken the test, and the doctor, come in to talk to me about the test. And I want to mention about an attitude that I had about being in the hospital, and about listening to the doctor, and about what the prognosis could be and what it could be like before I could go home. I had this overwhelming sense of it really didn't matter. In fact, I would have to say that if it leaned toward you got a problem, if it leaned toward you might not be able to live long, for some reason inside me, I felt that that was okay, and that's not me. I'm the guy that wanted to live forever. I'm the guy who was the person who had some fear of death because a lot of different reasons. Evidently, I wasn't ready back in the time when I was younger that I would feel that way. But all the tests came back. It really surprised me that they were good. And that evening on Thursday, I was discharged. And even the ride home, I continually was processing. I was continually thinking. I knew something drastically different had happened in my life. So we get home, and you got to keep in mind, we're talking about me coming home, but I'm going to add another line, another word to that in just a minute. But we come home, it's about dark when we get home, and I go ahead and go to bed, and it's not anything uncommon for me to get up at night. I may get up at 1 or 2 in the morning and go get a drink. But I can remember that first night I got up, and when I walked from the bedroom through the living room to get to the kitchen, we have a lot of windows that look out to the back, and there's street lights back in the back. And it's a real beautiful picture as far as the way it looks, because there's enough light that you can see everything, but it's not so bright that it bothers you. And when I looked out the window as I was walking to the kitchen, I thought, okay, I got a different feeling about this. Because we live in a location where it's near a railroad track, and on the other side of the railroad track there's a lot of people who live there. So every time I get up, I always watch. Is there somebody in the backyard? Is there somebody close by? But I remember one of the first thoughts that I had when I walked through was, there was no thought at all. There was no fear at all. There was no wondering if anybody was there. The only thing that I had on my mind is I don't care. That began to be a theme on a lot of things that were taking place in my life, that it seemed like that I didn't care. I didn't have any fear. I wasn't afraid of the night. There wasn't any thought of, is anybody out there? So I get up Friday morning, and you've heard this many times, my wife and I always get a little time in the morning to sit outside before it gets very warm. And so I get up and I find myself still processing, and so I'm in my regular day. Now, 2 days before, I just went through a near-death experience. This is Friday. I'm gonna have my coffee and I'm gonna get dressed and I'm going to work. That's what I do. I go to work every day and I work hard every day, and there's a lot of physical labor that takes place. And I think for somebody my age, I was doing quite a bit of outside physical work, moving rock, moving dirt, moving other things like that, some by hand, some by, tractor. And so I get up from being outside, I go get dressed, and I'm going to go to work. My wife says, you really ought to think about taking off. I'm fine. I'm going to go to work. Okay, well, the first thing you need to do is go by the bank and drop off a deposit. So I went to the bank. I walk into the bank and I say hi to a few people, make the deposit. And when I go back to the truck, I think, man, I am wore out. What in the world is wrong with me? And I get home and I said, look, I'm going to have to lay down. And I lay down, and about 2.5 hours later, I get up. And I move around. I don't go anywhere else. And then another couple hours, I'm down again for another couple of hours. A little later on that afternoon, I have to lay down again. And so I ended up having three naps during that day, which is very, very uncommon for me. And so it quickly became apparent after day one of coming home that I wasn't just coming home. I was coming home to recover. Now, a couple of days later, we get the doctor's report. It's the full report of everything that took place. And unless I missed it somewhere along the way, my wife was reading everything, and she's read this to you already in a previous video. But I didn't realize that from the sting, from the situation that took place, that I had what they classified from that. With the blood vessels being closed and the oxygen being cut off, I didn't realize that I'd had a heart attack. It ended up taking me 3 months before I could actually go back to work. Now, I got where I could get up and I could go check on jobs, but I couldn't do any work. And even after that 3 months, it got where it had become more and more difficult to pick up things, to do things. And I could tell that my body was physically weak. And yeah, it gave me a concern. Am I not going to be able to do the work that I did? What's it going to be like, going forward? But any time that I wasn't working, whether it's in the morning, during the day, or in the evening, I spent a great deal of time outside. I spent a great deal of time outside processing. Out of the event that took place, there were parts that I remember, such as getting stung, what it was like before I passed out, all of that I remember. And then waking up, being on the ground, I got about a minute. And it was crystal clear. I could remember everything that took place while I was on the ground. And then when I closed my eyes and I opened my eyes and I was in another place, that was totally crystal clear on what happened, what I saw, what it felt like. And all of that, I was trying to process what all was going on, what all was happening, and I felt this deep, deep feeling of disappointment. And I felt this feeling of becoming depressed. And I'm trying to figure out why would I feel down? Why would I feel depressed? Now, before the sting and in the videos before on what motivated me, I mentioned that I'd got to the highest high. I'd gotten where I knew that God was the only thing there, and I made up my mind that I was going to go after God, and I was going to become strong relationship-wise with Him. And I was going to do the things that He told me in His Word that I was to do. And I've got to say that my life was the happiest that it had ever been. I'm talking about joyful. I'm talking about peaceful. I'm talking about everything that could be tranquil. Now, did I have bad moments? Did I have bad days? Yes. And whenever I would take my eye off what it was I was supposed to do, and that is something that we're going to talk about in future videos of how Satan can come in behind you, how Satan can backdoor you, how Satan is trying to take away everything that you gain whenever you become a child of God that is dedicated to God. And from that, I kept finding myself, like just a few days ago, I was up here, and now I was feeling like I had been knocked off high center. I felt confused. I felt like I got to find my way. I got to figure out what is going on. And a lot of it had to do with the physical, because of the heart, because of everything that had taken place. And I've got to say that I spent every waking moment, play by play, going back over this. Now, I used to be a football coach, basketball coach. I went over everything that took place, everything that happened. And then trying to figure out, what can I do to get back to where I was, because I didn't have the physical strength, and I didn't have the mental capacity to be where I was when I had that highest point in my relationship with God. So after a couple of days, when I knew that I was in a different position, I was sitting outside one morning waiting on Samantha to come out, and once again, we're going to have coffee. And I can still remember how I felt. I was sitting there on the patio, and I was just kind of looking down. And she came out and she sat down, and we talked for a moment. And I'll be honest, I was going from here to there, trying to figure. I'm totally processing the whole time. I still don't have the answers. I don't know why, for a person whose life was saved, why that person can't be excited, why I can't be ecstatic. Why in the world am I depressed? Why am I down? And I've got no answers at that particular moment. And then she asked me a question. She said, "Lundy, what's wrong with you? You act like you lost your best friend." And I can remember whenever she said that, it's like it all clicked and came together. This was the first time that I started putting reason to what was going on, why I was down, why I was feeling depressed. So I sat back in my chair and I said, "Let me explain this to you." You know that I love you, and you know that I love the kids more than anything. But I was in a position where my life came to an end. And all of us, you and me both, we all know that we're to love God the most. And that doesn't mean that I don't love family. That just means that God says that if you're going to be worthy, you're going to love me the most. And that's where I had gotten to on the morning of June 30th, 2021. And I got stung. My life came to an end. I knew it was coming to an end. I closed my eyes. I opened my eyes. I was in another world. I was where I dream and you dream of being. And it was the most glorious feeling of feeling God and His love all around you. And then all of a sudden that's taken away. All of a sudden it ends and you open your eyes and you're back in this world. In my case, I was in the back of an ambulance throwing up. And I'm back in this world. And I told her, I said, I don't feel like I belong here. I don't feel like I'm supposed to be here. I was somewhere else where we want to be. And it all stopped. It all came to a halt. And I'm here, and I'm going to tell you, I don't know what it is that I'm supposed to do. So I made up my mind, okay, I've got a job. I've got to go find out what it is that I'm supposed to do. So I didn't come home just to come home. I found out that my coming home was coming home to recover and to search and get answers. Thank you.